Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. Hopefully we'll have some tune in here in a few minutes and watch this live video. I put a post on Facebook earlier this morning that I was going to go live this morning around 10 to give everybody a heads up. I did a live video yesterday afternoon, and then I mentioned in my video earlier this morning that I enjoy doing the live videos, but my life is so busy and so hectic that typically most of the time, the only time I'm available to do a live video would be between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. And I just think that's an awful time to do a live video because almost everybody in the world's asleep. And if they are awake, they're either probably sick, working third shift so they can't watch, or they're up because they're drunk. So I figure 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. is probably an awful time to do live videos. But I do enjoy doing them because I enjoy getting the live feedback. That way, if you get off track and just talk about random stuff, it's okay because you're answering comments. But as I mentioned in my video yesterday, good morning, Marcus. How are you? Thanks for tuning in. I am doing fantastic. Every day is a good day. In my opinion, no such thing as a bad day. There are bad moments in days, but bad moments don't make bad days. We choose to let bad moments make bad days. But glad you are here. Marcus, thanks for tuning in. My main topics today are going to be college football, the NFL, and a little NASCAR. But as I said, if we get comments, we can always talk about anything else. But as I said in yesterday's video, on my phone, my words are about this big. So if somebody just comments, hey, what's up, I can see that. But the words are about this big and they're about this far apart. So if somebody sends me a comment of a bunch of words, they all run together and it looks like one big word. It's not that I have bad vision, it's just the phone is far away, the words are this big, and they're this far apart. But if you see me looking close to the screen, it's because I'm trying to read the comments. I do not want to ignore anybody, but I do want to discuss some college football and some NFL after we talk about a little bit NASCAR, not much. But yesterday was the first race in the chase for the playoff championship, as NASCAR calls it. Joey Logano gets the win, followed by Daniel Suarez, Ryan Blaney, Christopher Bell, Alex Bowman, Tyler Reddick, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, William Byron, and Austin Cindric rounded out the top 10. I don't know how Joey Logano does it, but Logano always seems like he struggles for almost the entire regular season. Does just enough to make the playoffs, and then come playoff time, he's always competing for the championship. He's already won 2. I think he'll win 5 or 6 by the time his career is over with. But this Sunday is Go Bowling at the Glen, which of course is Watkins Glen. That is Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. And Darrell Wallace Jr. is talking about possibly retiring because he mentioned having a baby on the way. And I think that's because he sucks. And I think he's starting to realize he sucks. So he's threatening retiring so that he can retire before he loses his job, because he will eventually lose his job because he sucks. But I wanted to make a couple of comments on some college football games from Saturday that I didn't really discuss yesterday, and one of those is California and Auburn. I went to the Furman game Saturday with my man JJ that I do our weekly wrestling and racing podcast with, and he was all excited because he said he picked California to pull off the upset. But of course he was talking about, the point spread, and I told him, I have not seen a point spread, but I don't really know if I personally would consider California beating Auburn an upset because, yeah, Auburn may have been favored. I guess they were if he picked Cal and won. But to me, both teams suck. And when two teams that suck play each other, I don't know how you could call an upset when one wins. When two teams suck play each other, one has to win, but it doesn't mean they're good. It just means they suck less than the other team. But I think California sucks, and I think Auburn sucks. Pittsburgh and Cincinnati only because these two teams used to be rivals back in the day. Cincinnati led the entire game, and then Pittsburgh comes from behind late in the game to win 28-27. And it's amazing how Scott Satterfield did so good at Appalachian State, did average at Louisville, but as he stayed there longer, the longer he stayed, the worse they got. And Cincinnati is showing no improvement at all. So you'll probably be hearing and seeing some Scott Satterfield hot seat stuff probably mid-season, even though he ain't been there that long. They're not showing any signs of improvement. And the last game that I want to talk about from college football, I mentioned yesterday that the game wasn't close, but I didn't say a whole lot about the game. And that is South Carolina and Kentucky. Now, if you follow the channel and watch the videos, you know that I believe it was Friday's video I talked about that game, and I said I thought South Carolina would win the game. And I don't know where the overall history of the series stands, but it seems like when those two teams play each other, it's always close every year. This time it wasn't, but the reason why I picked the Gamecocks on Friday to win the game is even though they struggled against Old Dominion, they still won and they still looked okay. Kentucky only played basically a half against Southern Miss, who is not very good. And Kentucky's offensive line against Southern Miss was not impressive at all. And that's a shock because generally Mark Stoops always has a great offensive line because he loves to run the ball. And their offensive line Saturday against South Carolina was atrocious. Kentucky's in for a long season. They might be the worst team in the SEC, worse than Arkansas, who sucks, worse than Mississippi State, who sucks, and worse than Vanderbilt. Kentucky is awful. Their offensive line cannot block anybody, so therefore they can't run the ball, and they're always a running team. And Brock Vandagriff is hideous. So when you can't throw the ball deep and you can't run the ball and your quarterback can't run, there really ain't a whole lot you can do. Kentucky's in for a long season, but Brock Vandagriff Saturday, I believe his quarterback rating was 1.7, I think I saw. And honestly, really true, in all the years I've been watching football, I did not know that 1.7 was possible. I thought you'd at least get a 12 for completing a couple passes. But he was 3 for 10 for 30 yards and a quarterback rating of 1.7. That is absolutely awful. So how you go back to that, I don't know. But I think he's still better than their backup. And if he is, Kentucky has no quarterback because Brock Vandagriff looked absolutely horrible. But South Carolina, who I said back probably in June was a 5 or 6 win team, I still think they're a 5 or 6 win team. But as the season goes on, you realize some teams are better than you expected, and some teams aren't as good as you expected. I thought South Carolina would beat Kentucky, but I didn't think it'd be that bad, 31-6. But they only had 250 yards of offense. But when your defense dominates like that, you don't need a great offense as long as you don't turn the ball over and give the other team cheap, easy touchdowns. But I thought South Carolina would lose to LSU and still think they will. But LSU so far hasn't looked as good as I thought they would. They struggled with Nicholls State Saturday. So I think still that LSU beat South Carolina, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if the game is close and if the Gamecocks pull off the upset. But I want to talk some about the Braves very quickly. The Braves right now are tied with the Mets for the final wild card spot, but they're only a couple games out from the first wild card spot. So the Braves could get the first wild card spot, and they could miss the playoffs. But they've got a makeup game from a rainout earlier in the season with the Reds today. And then For the rest of the season, their schedule ain't tough. Outside of they've got 4 with the Dodgers, and that series could make or break the Braves' playoff chances. But outside of that 4 with the Dodgers, they really have a pretty easy schedule coming down the stretch. But that Dodger series is going to loom large on determining whether or not the Braves make the playoffs. But NFL talk from yesterday, I tell you what, the Panthers are an embarrassment. They need to just shut down their team. They are awful. Derek Carr looked like the best quarterback in football against the Panthers. He went 19 for 23, 200 yards, and 3 touchdowns, and didn't play the whole game. And you never see an NFL game where the backup quarterback comes in because of the score. Usually when the backup comes in, either the starter is struggling or the starter got hurt. But the Saints just dominated the Panthers. I think it was 30-3 at halftime. And a lot of folks don't know this, but the reason Matt Rule got fired from the Panthers is because Matt Rule wanted to fix the defense first, but the folks above him wanted to fix the offense first. So when you have the owners and general managers wanting to go one direction and the coach wanting to go another direction, generally somebody gets fired, and most of the time it's the head coach. And in Matt Rule's case, it was. I still think Matt Rule's a great coach, and I think he would have done great there had they given him a chance to do what he wanted. But now, looking at the pay suck on both sides of the ball, they have nowhere to go either side of the ball. So either one you fix doesn't really matter because the other one still sucks out loud. But if that owner don't hurry up and sell the team, then whoever eventually down the line takes over, they're going to have so far to go that they're going to be in the hole for a decade. But they are absolutely an embarrassment, and if they go 0-17, it would not surprise me at all. So the Saints win big. Panthers, after one game, we can determine they're the worst team in the NFL, and it's not close. The one thing about the NFL that is enjoyable for me, unlike the college game, I still like the college game a little bit better as far as the on-the-field product. But the one thing that makes the NFL more enjoyable for me is in college, everybody knows who my team is. You know, I don't walk around and talk about them all the time, but generally when you see me out in public, I'm wearing their hat, their shirt, something. You know who I pull for. You see me going down the road, you know, hey, that's Brandon. They're my team. But I don't hoot and holler all the time and never have. But I also have a couple teams that I totally despise in the college game that I enjoy seeing them lose. But in the NFL, I treat the NFL like most NBA fans treat the NBA. Very few NBA fans actually like a team. They like superstars. So they'll follow a superstar and pull for whatever team he plays for. That's kind of the way I treat the NFL. I don't really have a team. I have teams that I enjoy when they win, but I don't have any of their merchandise, no memorabilia, nothing. They're just there. If they win, great. If they lose, oh well. And the only team that I really can't stand in the NFL is the Cowboys. Outside of that, I watch the NFL just for the players. If there's a game on and a team has a great quarterback or a great running back or a great receiver, I watch the game. I don't care who wins. I'm just watching it for the love of the game. So when I watch the NFL, I'm watching it more for the superstars on the field, not for a certain team. Whereas in the college game, I'm usually watching and pulling for a certain team. But Jim Harbaugh gets his first win as the Chargers head coach. They beat the Raiders 22-10. Justin Herbert was 19 for 26 for 144 yards and a touchdown, so nothing impressive. But the Raiders have no offense, so Justin Herbert really just had to go out there and not make mistakes, which he avoided. And the Chargers are just better than the Raiders. But Jim Harbaugh, everybody hates him because he's a strange man. But everywhere he goes, he wins, and he will win with the Chargers. And then we have the Steelers beating the Falcons 18-10 with 6 field goals. Justin Fields goes 17 for 23 for 156 yards passing, and I think he also had 57 rushing yards. So he didn't do anything great, but just like Herbert, he didn't make any mistakes outside of the very first play. He fumbled the ball. But the Falcons have a quarterback problem, and I may have mentioned this back during the NFL draft. I can't recall, so just in case I didn't, I'll bring it up again. But Kirk Cousins is not worth the money he got. But I think the Falcons were afraid he would get away and they wouldn't get a good quarterback in the draft and they'd be stuck with nobody. So they panicked and they went out and overpaid him big time. But the problem is Kirk Cousins has been in the league for over a decade. You know what kind of quarterback he is. You know, he's going to get the Falcons to 9-8, 10-7 every year. They'll make the playoffs, and then first game, they lose. That's what Kirk Cousins does. He beats bad teams and loses to good teams, but he plays just enough bad teams to make the playoffs, and then he loses. The only way the Falcons might win a playoff game is if it's in the daytime. Kirk Cousins' numbers at nighttime are awful. So if the Falcons make the playoffs, which I think they will, and their first playoff game is a night game, they lose. If it's a day game, they'll win one game. So with Kirk Cousins, you know what you get. You're going to go 9-8, 10-7, make the playoffs, and not be a threat, get beat first round. With Michael Penix Jr., you don't know what you're going to get because he hasn't played. So what do? Are you satisfied with Kirk Cousins and making the playoffs, or do you want more than that? Because if you want more than that, then you have to go to Michael Penix Jr. But if you're satisfied just making the playoffs, you stick with Kirk Cousins. The problem is now you're in a pickle because everybody has seen Kirk Cousins play long enough to where we know what he is. He's a good quarterback, but he's not great. With Penix Jr., we don't know. But if you play Kirk Cousins, then all the fans think you're an idiot because you're playing the worst quarterback of your two quarterbacks, and you're supposed to want to win. And if you want to win, then clearly you should play Michael Penix Jr. But if you play Michael Penix Jr., then you look stupid as a franchise for paying a quarterback that kind of money to put him on the bench. Who in the world wants to see somebody pay a quarterback that kind of money and not play him? So either way, the Falcons now have a problem. You look stupid for paying Kirk Cousins that kind of money and not playing him. But then you look stupid for putting Penix on the bench when he's the better quarterback of the two. But that division's so bad, I think the Falcons win that division, so I think they'll make the playoffs. But the Bucs have been a surprise team the last couple of years because they've gotten no kind of credit, no kind of talk, no kind of hype, and they won. And they won yesterday, so they might do it again this year. The Cowboys beat the Browns 33-17. Dak Prescott was 19 for 32, 179 yards, and a touchdown. Deshaun Watson was 24 for 45, 169 yards, one touchdown, 2 interceptions. And I'll be honest with you, Dak Prescott just got a huge contract yesterday morning, and just like Kirk Cousins, he's getting overpaid. But when one quarterback gets overpaid, they're all going to want to get overpaid. And I've mentioned this before to these guys, it's a job. To us, it looks like, fantasy world to go out there and get paid that kind of money to play football. But to them, it's a profession, so it's a job. So they look at it as, hey, if he's worth that much, I'm worth that much. And next thing you know, they're all overpaid. But the problem is, Dak Prescott is not a top 5 quarterback. Top 10 maybe, top 5, he's not. But all the guys above him are not available. So if you're the Cowboys, you have to pay him what he wants or you lose him. And out of all the quarterbacks available, Dak's the best one, so you have to keep him. But yesterday he didn't do a whole lot. He didn't have to. The game was over at halftime. I think the Browns scored 3 in the first half, if memory serves. And I think Deshaun Watson had less than 50 passing yards in the first half. And me and my man JJ that I talked about a few minutes ago at the Furman game Saturday, coming back home Saturday night, we were talking about the Browns and Cowboys, and I told him I was looking forward to that game because, I want Deshaun Watson to succeed. And, not only was he good in college, because a lot of quarterbacks look good in college and get in the NFL and they suck, but when Deshaun Watson went to the Texans, he was really good the first 3 or 4 years. And then all of a sudden the Texans don't want him no more. And I told JJ, I said, I think he's done. I do. He's not done age wise, but mentally, he's done. I think between the fact that he did so good in Houston and they still didn't want him there, and then all the stuff with him getting all those massages and now the injuries, I think it's all took a toll on him up here. And it doesn't matter how good you are physically. If you're done mentally, you're done. And the way Deshaun Watson's playing right now, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he's out of the league in about 3 years, unless he makes a drastic turnaround. If you watched that game yesterday and you were new to football or new to the Browns or new to Deshaun Watson and you didn't see the name on the back of the jersey and didn't know who it was and you watched him throw, you would think to yourself, is this guy a wide receiver playing quarterback? Is this guy a running back playing quarterback? I mean, he looked awful. His throws were overthrown, underthrown, way too early, way too late. I mean, he looked awful. When that game got to halftime and the Browns had 3 and he had about 50 passing yards, I said, this game's done. I mean, they looked awful. They couldn't run the ball, didn't try to run the ball, and they couldn't throw the ball. So I knew at halftime the game was over. I want Deshaun to succeed so bad, but the way he's playing now, if he don't make a huge, quick turnaround, he'll be out of the league in a couple of years because he's doing nothing that's going to make anybody want him. I mean, he couldn't have sucked any worse. Yesterday, he averaged 6 yards per completion, as I said, 24 to 45 for 169, but that's because the game was out of hand. I mean, in the first half, when the Browns were trying to hang in there, he couldn't hit a target. He made one good throw the whole first half, and the tight end dropped it. But outside of that, he was absolutely awful. I mean, there's no beating around the bush. There's no other way to say it. He sucked. He was awful. He was terrible. If you paid him to suck worse, he couldn't have sucked worse. He sucked in the first half yesterday. And at that rate, who's going to want that? If you're the Browns, if he keeps playing like that by game 4 or 5, you're going to have to go to your backup because there's nothing Deshaun Watson did yesterday that was of a winning formula. I mean, nothing. He didn't make not one good decision, not one good throw in the whole first half. I mean, he was absolutely awful. He looked like a running back or a wide receiver that was converting to quarterback. He looked terrible. The game of the weekend, though, was the Friday night game, the Eagles and the Packers. Now, it looks like Jordan Love is going to be out for a while. He got hurt late in that game, but I know a lot of folks didn't get to watch that game because you had to stream it and pay for it and watch it. But it was the game of the weekend. The Eagles win the game 34 to 29. But both offenses looked pretty good. The Eagles, of course, now have Kellen Moore calling plays, and he's generally a pretty good offensive coordinator. But the Packers looked good too. But the Eagles are supposed to have a top 15 defense. They sure didn't start off that way Friday night. And they always say that the first game, the defense is ahead of the offense. It didn't look that way for the Eagles Friday. It looked like their offense was ahead of their defense. But I think both teams are going to be decent. I think the Eagles win their division. I think the Packers have a chance to get a wild card depending on how long Jordan Love is out. But I think Detroit wins that division. So both teams are pretty good, and it was a good game. Game of the weekend. Too bad nobody was able to see it. Any thoughts on any of this, please feel free to let me know. I might try to do another live coming up sometime later on this week. I'm not sure. It depends on how much free time I have, but I'm going to try my best to be able to do one at some point later on this week. Any thoughts on it, again, please feel free to let me know. But until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of three. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.